We begin with some news that only first broke last night, as first reported by PWInsider.com. I was just talking last week on the show about 5 WWE stars whose contracts have either expired or will soon be expiring. Becky Lynch's contract expired on June 1st. Company does not expect her to go anywhere, but she's taking an extended break. Natalya, her deal is up soon. She has a new offer in front of her. She has yet to sign anything or accept it. Angel Garza, his name popped up last week, of Legado del Fantasma. He has a deal also that is up soon. And Chad Gable, who is challenging for the Intercontinental title this weekend in Scotland. His deal is either already up or is about to be up. I believe it was supposed to be up this past Friday. But it's always possible he signed a brief extension. If Gable hits the free agent market, he is not going to be hurting for work. He's even got interest from MMA promotions in signing him. But if he does hit the market, he's going to have some competition, because the other name I talked about last week was Ricochet. His deal is up sometime this summer. Well, according to Mike Johnson, PW Insider has confirmed with multiple sources that Ricochet has given notice that he intends to exit the company when his current contract expires. He's told that Ricochet is expected to be written out of WWE storylines very soon in advance of his contract expiration, which, you know what that means. He's going to be murdered by Braun Breaker. That's what it means. If this was Lucha Underground and he was Prince Puma, he would literally be murdered. Dave Meltzer, though, is now reporting as of this morning, as of just a few hours before I started recording here, Meltzer is saying that the situation between Ricochet and WWE is up in the air, which would be the first report since Mike Johnson's report last night to sort of conflict with it. I mean, it's Meltzer, so he's being a little vague here, saying that it's up in the air. But, last week, I put the chances of him leaving as higher than Becky and Natty, but I still didn't think he would actually leave. If the original report is true, and he is leaving, and he's already told them he's leaving, then good for him. He's betting on himself, which is exactly what Will Ospreay said that he was hoping Ricochet would do in an interview that he did recently with comicbook.com. Ospreay said, "I just want to see him with more time and ability to showcase himself how I saw him. He's one of the best going, and if the opportunity presents itself, I think he should bet on himself. I think he should remind himself that he is one of the best high flyers to ever do it. If it means he's got to come for me, then do it, boss, because I'm right here waiting for you." In that same interview, Ospreay said he found WWE's use of Ricochet on their Speed show on X, which, he wrestles 5-minute matches on that show, or matches less than 5 minutes. He found WWE's use of him on there to be appalling. Ricochet is the first ever Speed champion. Ospreay's point was the fact that WWE only values his time for under 5 minutes is appalling to him. But see, that ignores the fact that he has been pretty steadily featured on Raw for a while now under Paul Levesque. I mean, it's not as if he was exclusively doing 3-minute matches on Twitter. Okay, that's a little misleading. But Ospreay is a huge Ricochet fan, and his point is well taken. He feels, as many people do, that WWE doesn't recognize what they have in him. The kind of performer that he is, that he's been taken for granted, and he's been underutilized. I said last week, the Ricochet that we see now on WWE television is only 75% of what Ricochet can actually do in the ring. I was probably underestimating that number. It's probably closer to 50%. And Ricochet in WWE at 50% of what he's allowed to do is still a phenomenal performer. But it's not it's not the Ricochet that we saw on the Indies 10 years ago. It's not the Prince Puma that we saw in Lucha Underground. I said in WWE, he's one of a kind. In AEW, he would be one of many who work that style. We're getting Will Ospreay against Rey Fenix for the international title on Dynamite this week. You won't find a match like that on WWE television. In AEW, we get them routinely. Some people like that, some people don't. Some people like vanilla ice cream, some people like chocolate. The bottom line is, he came to NXT with a ton of fanfare, and he still felt like a big deal there. Once he hit the main roster, he never regained that feeling. He's been United States champion, he's been Intercontinental champion, but there was always something missing. There was always something lacking there. Vince McMahon saw him as a good hand. He was a good utility player, but he wasn't a star. He fed him to their actual stars, and that diminished his status, but it hasn't diminished his talent. He may be 6 years older now than he was when he first joined WWE, but that Ricochet of old is still buried in there, I do believe. He may have realized it too and felt that it was now or never. At 35, he either locks himself into another 3 to 5 year deal that expires when he's 40, or he leaves. And he shows people why there was so much fanfare around him in the first place. That's the thing about being a performer like Ricochet, doing all those, crazy aerial moves and the flips and everything that he does. It has a short shelf life. When he turns 40 and he's 42, 45, he's not going to be able to do a lot of that shit. He's going to have to adapt. He's going to have to change. And that's normal. But if he still feels like there are things that he can do that he is being held back from doing, that has to be part of his calculus here. How important is that to him to have the freedom to go out there and perform and wrestle in the way that he wants to? So he either locks himself into a long-term deal and like I said, it's over when he's 40, or he leaves. And he shows people why there was so much fanfare around him in the first place. He can remind people of who the hell he is. I do think his promo skills hurt him in WWE. It won't be as important to him elsewhere. It's not the main thing that he's going to be judged by. This man here, Ricochet, was the first ever House of Glory World Champion. We're coming up on that 10-year anniversary in August of when he won that title. He and AJ Styles wrestled to a time limit draw during that run. This is a man who had a memorable run in New Japan and all over the independent scene. He is going to light that scene on fire all over again the minute his contract is up. But in WWE, he hit his ceiling. He has banged his head on that ceiling many times. There was nowhere left realistically for him to go. They were never going to push him at a level higher than the one that he is at right now. It was a dead end. That's why he's leaving, if he leaves. Again, there's still some speculation about whether or not he will or not, but that's why he's leaving. If he goes to AEW, he won't end up in a much better position after the initial splash that he makes. It'll be a big deal when he first comes in. It's always a big deal when they first come in. Right? I mean, look at Mercedes and all these different people. Everyone gets a big splash when they initially come in, and then some people settle at a higher level than others. I'm sure Tony Khan is salivating over being able to book the first Ricochet Will Ospreay match in 7 years. I don't know exactly when this summer his deal is up, but if Ospreay doesn't main event at Wembley, and I just can't imagine he doesn't, but if he doesn't, then it's entirely possible we could be looking at Ricochet against Will Ospreay as soon as London in August. And he would have a ton of other great opponents to work with in that company. But people, again, they need to temper their expectations. If they think that Ricochet is just going to walk into AEW and wind up in a much better position than the one that he's in now. There's more than a few people that you could say that about right now on the AEW roster who you would look at and go, boy, they should really be in a better position than the one that they're in. Losing Ricochet, or even someone like Chad Gable, is not going to be some game-changing loss for WWE that's going to take months to recover from. We know this. They're just going to plug somebody else into their spot, and the machine rolls on. They're not at a level in that company where it would be a devastating loss for them. But they would be quality pickups for anybody else. And look, if he does leave, it's not a foregone conclusion that he would be going to AEW or signing a contract to go full-time with AEW. I think a return to New Japan would be great. God knows they could use some stars over there right now. The timing couldn't be better for him, given all the names they've lost. They lost Okada, they lost Ospreay, they lost Jay White, Tama Tonga, among others. There feels like there's a void there to be filled. There would be a real opening for him right now at the top of that roster. And with the working relationship that they have with AEW, he would still be able to make guest appearances there for big matches. Can they pay him enough to make it worth his while? That's the question. This is not the New Japan of 5 years ago. In fact, they just had a press conference this week talking about how to improve things. And the fact that they even had that press conference tells you that they know there's problems in that company. And I'm going to go over the 10-point plan that Tanahashi put forth a little bit later on here. But again, even though it's not the New Japan of 5 years ago, that could be a great landing spot for him. TNA is a possibility. Nick Nemeth, Mustafa Ali, they ended up there. Nemeth is going to end up being TNA World Champion at some point. Ali is the current X Division Champion. Ricochet would be wrestling for their world title. For their X title and their world title if he signed there. And like with AEW, he would still be able to work indies. Now, my money, if he's leaving, my money is on him landing in AEW. I still think that is the likeliest option here, or the likeliest scenario to play out. But in either case, whether it's TNA, whether it's AEW, or anywhere else, we're going to be seeing Ricochet popping up in a lot of places very soon. And that's going to be a lot of fun to see. The fact is, if this man is not happy, or maybe he's happy or he's satisfied, but he's not fulfilled with where he is right now and what they have him doing, then he should leave. He shouldn't feel obligated to stay just because the money is good or because his fiance works there. If he got lowballed on a new offer and he feels he can make more somewhere else, he should leave. If you worked for the same company for 6 years, making good money, and you wanted a raise, and their offer wasn't to your liking, you wanted a raise, you wanted to move up, you wanted a new title, more responsibilities, and their offer wasn't to your liking, you would probably start sending out your resume, right? I mean, it's no different here. If that's how he feels, then he should look elsewhere. The only difference is, in wrestling, there are far fewer places to work where you can make that kind of money, that he's probably making right now with his current employer. It's not like you're an advertising executive. There's hundreds of ad agencies that you could go work for, maybe thousands. In pro wrestling, you could count the number of companies that pay big money on one hand and still have fingers left over. Whatever it is that is pushing him over that line to make the decision that it sounds like he's made, he needs to be wherever he feels he is going to be the happiest and he is going to be the most fulfilled in what he does. I just talked about R-Truth the other night. Apparently he was live on TikTok, and when asked if he had any confession to make about wrestling, he said he was mad at himself when he thinks about where he is and where he wanted to be in his career. He's 50 years old, doing comedy and acting like a cartoon character. He's also one half of the World Tag Team Champions, and he makes a damn good living for he and his family. Right? There are worse spots to be in. But he's also a former NWA World Champion, and I'm sure when he was a champion back then when he was much younger, he didn't envision this being where he would end up in wrestling, right? I don't think very few people do. Hey, I want to get into wrestling and be the next Santino Marella. There's nothing wrong with being Santino Marella, but usually you get in and you want to be in as high up on the card as you possibly can be. You want to make the most money, you want to be the champion, you want to be a top star. He's a former NWA World Champion who feels like he could have done more than just comedy for the past decade plus. Ricochet is 35 now. He shouldn't wait until he's 45 to look back and then jump on TikTok and go, man, I wish I hadn't just taken the money and stayed. This is not the spot that I wanted to be in. Because if that's how he feels, then he needs to bet on himself and leave. And go work with the people that he wants to work with, having the freedom to have the types of matches that he wants to have.